So my Lily Orchid video did pretty well considering my channel size. Both me and the two guys who collaborated with me got a boost in subs, and I got some views on my channel. This also means I got a taste of the YouTube comment section. A lot of these comments were mostly positive, with several points giving constructive criticism. Two of those points I will not be discussing in this video, but there's one that really bothered me, and that's the one I want to talk about today. Forced diversity in movies, and why it doesn't exist. Actually, let me clarify what I mean. Generally today, when talking about media and the likes of Marvel or Star Wars, people like to throw around this term as a means of criticism. But before we get into that, we need to define forced diversity. Forced diversity is the term often used to describe having a diverse cast of characters without any real reason in the story. This can refer to simply having a diverse cast to retroactively changing the race or gender of a character in a story. I'll start with the second example because I believe this has merit. Retroactively changing the race, gender, or sexual orientation of a character is forced. A good example of this that always comes to mind is the Harry Potter series. J.K. Rowling has made an admission to detailed changes within the Harry Potter story in order to score diversity points, except for trans people. Characters who were described as white are now black because she made a tweet, and characters who have no romantic relevance at all now have intense sexual gay romances. What the fuck? Anyway, personally, this comes off as very offensive to me, because it shows an inability or simple laziness to create new and original characters for women and minorities to relate to. You want to have a diverse cast? Create diverse characters. You want to avoid tokenism? Make more characters. Simply changing characters just feels cheap and lazy. However, there are means of changing the race/gender of characters within the story without seeming like an asshole. DC Comics did this when changing the race of Wally West because they just rebooted the entire continuity in order to change the race of the character. While this is still forced diversity, this isn't done with the same manner of laziness as Turf K. Rowling does. In addition, while I advise against it, I will concede that changing a black character to a white character is different from changing a character that is white to black, especially if the race isn't important to the character. Women and minority representation is still kinda new in the grand scheme of all of media, so generally it is more acceptable than, say, whitewashing, but it's not like whitewashing doesn't happen today. Also, something else I want to bring up specifically with adaptations. I see a lot of people bitch about comic book accuracy when making a comic book into a movie, and then complaining about that. If you want to complain about comic book accuracy, be consistent with it. If you would like to boycott the next Spider-Man because Peter Parker might be gay, then boycott movies like Civil War, which are almost nothing like their comic book counterparts. But now let's go back to the first example, which is the inclusion of a more diverse characters for political reasons. To go back to the comment I mentioned earlier, this guy cited media examples of forced diversity. Now, I'm not familiar with all the examples, but the ones I can talk about are Spider-Man, Thor, and Star Wars. The Disney Star Wars films have a very diverse cast. Spider-Man sees new characters such as Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen, and Thor gives Jane Foster the hammer. Now, these are probably just ways comic book writers are trying to get more diverse characters in their stories. However, all these examples have nuance to their characters. Jane Foster is Thor's ex-girlfriend who has cancer, and the cancer is cured through having Thor's hammer. Plus, Thor gets to use Stormbreaker, which is cool. Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales are from alternate universes from the regular one that Peter Parker resides in, and they're also very different characters from Peter Parker. And Star Wars just kind of has a diverse cast. There's not really much to it. That's just how it is. So now that we've explained what forced diversity is, at least as a concept, we need to ask ourselves a question. What's so wrong about it? Whenever I hear this, I can never understand what's the big deal about forced diversity. To refer back to the comment, the guy says, I think it's been too easy to defend diversity choices by simply saying that people with issues only have an issue with the skin and gender themselves. I think this is misleading, as dozens and dozens of reviewers and YouTubers that I've come across have of a problem with the skin and more of an issue with the politics behind it. So politics is the issue. So I guess you won't like things like Watchmen, Marvel Civil War, The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Under the Red Hood, or literally anything having to do with X-Men. Like, you can find politics in almost every type of media, especially if your definition of politics is simply putting women and minorities in movies. There's also the case of choosing minority actors in roles where it's not really important and blaming them for the reason said movie sucks. The reason why movies like the Ghostbusters remakes suck ass have nothing to do with diversity. It's just because the script was shit and, well, everything else about that movie was ass. You can change the actors and nothing really changes. In addition, you wouldn't blame movies that have a male-dominant roles being the reasons that they suck ass. But then there's the big old question. Why? Why be more inclusive with your cast of characters? Why does it need to be there? Well, that's simple. You want to have a cast of characters that all groups of people can watch. This can be done for wanting to give minority groups more people to relate to and aspire to, or simply to make more money through being able to attract different types of audiences. And quite frankly, these people exist in the real world. Now, something else that does bother me is when studios are very disingenuous for why they have diverse casts in their films. Sure, Disney will have a lot of black actors in live action roles, but be ready to have a lot of their roles diminished through editing because China doesn't like black people. And God forbid China ever put gay characters in their film. By the way, I'm talking about the country, not the people. And this doesn't mean you have to hate on media in the past for not being woke. There's always something that you do today that's going to be considered fucked up tomorrow. You can still enjoy movies like Aladdin or The Sound of Music for what these films do very well, accept that these films are products of their time, and then judge modern films accordingly. Now, this doesn't mean these movies are immune. Movies like Gone with the Wind and Song of the South were made in a post-Civil War America and feature slavery in a pretty positive light, which is kinda fucked up. Bottom line, sure, forced diversity is a thing that exists in media, but the way it's used as a criticism is, at best, it's ignorant and disingenuous to use, and at worst, it is a dog whistle for something much more sinister. And as a final note, I'd like to quote a YouTuber, Toonrific Tyreek, who I think puts out the fundamental issues with all of this. If you think that making characters that aren't a straight white male is pandering or forced, then you think a straight white male is the standard. Thank you for everyone who watched all the way until the end. I wanted to make this a face cam video, but currently my room's a mess, so those types of videos aren't going to be coming up for a little bit. Now, I am going to leave a link to the Lily Orchid video in the description of this video, and please do not go after the guy whose comment I was initially responding to. He even said before that he didn't really have the credibility to be making a comment like that. It's just something that I've been seeing for a long time. I also intend on making a video in the future about the whole Mary Sue concept, but that's going to take a little bit of time. And, as always, until next time.